"It's not working!" screams a medic as he administers a second dose of Narcan, an opioid overdose reversal agent, up the nose of a man who's been lying unconscious in the filthy street. The man's arms and legs are a map of painful weeping ulcers. A few feet away, a young woman barely looks up as she plunges a needle into the stump that was once her leg. This isn't a scene from a television show. This is the reality of today's inner cities. In today's episode of the Infographics Show, we'll look at the new street drug that rots your skin. The US has a serious drug problem, but there is one drug that's working its way across the country like a modern-day plague: xylazine, aka tranq, sometimes referred to in the media as the zombie drug. Philadelphia's Kensington area was once a bustling community, but now it's a deindustrialized wasteland of drug-addled civic failure that's been called the Walmart of heroin. But it's xylazine that's becoming the drug of choice here. It's currently in about 90% of Kensington's entire drug supply, and as you'll see later, it's spreading its arms around America, and as of late has been causing havoc across the pond in Europe in places such as the UK, Estonia, and Latvia. Xylazine itself is a deadly serious matter, not only because of the adverse effects it has on the body, but because it doesn't respond to the medicines that can rescue someone from a potentially fatal overdose. It isn't an opioid, so Narcan or naloxone can't bring someone back from the dead if it's tranq that's coursing through their system. Xylazine is not for human consumption. It's fit for horses, cows, pigs, and maybe your pet pit bull, but it certainly isn't supposed to be in you. Still, a drug that's used to sedate animals can just as easily calm down humans on the streets of Philadelphia and wherever else xylazine now calls home. It knocks you out, it makes you feel good, it helps you forget. It also causes ataxia, a loss of muscle control that affects coordination, which is why, in their euphoric stupor, users tend to lean forward with drooped arms in the style of flesh-eating zombies. It doesn't look like it from the outside, but this feeling is pleasurable and highly addictive. It does exactly what its users paid for, but this comes with the major drawback of some serious adverse side effects. If it doesn't kill you, it can create a situation where your body tissues start to die, aka necrosis. The injection sites can turn into small wounds in the skin, and those wounds can fester and turn into large infected, gaping ulcers. Users become hooked on a drug that can rot their bodies and cause vasoconstriction, a reduced blood flow to bodily tissues. Tracy McCann is a 39-year-old woman on the streets of Kensington whose skin started turning scaly after injecting what she thought was fentanyl. It was fentanyl, but like most batches these days, it was mixed with xylazine to give it that extra kick. As we'll soon show you, xylazine is also cheap, so traffickers mix it with other drugs, saving them money while killing off American citizens who usually don't know what's in their fent, smack, crack, crank, or fake prescription pills. McCann got hooked on pain meds after a car crash. In 2009, she met a guy in rehab, and he introduced her to heroin. Her story is a template for American drug addiction in what experts call the three waves of the opioid crisis. Wave 1, people got hooked on prescription pain pills. Wave 2, they went to the streets to find heroin when their well of pills ran dry. Wave 3, a tsunami of synthetic opioids washed over America. 10 years after her introduction to heroin, McCann switched to a more potent fentanyl. And in 2020, when xylazine had already made its way to the streets of Philadelphia, she soon found herself hanging out with people whose ulcerated arms and legs were covered in fleas and maggots. Even after watching a man get shot dead in front of her, she couldn't escape the grasp of xylazine. For everything it gives in pleasure, it takes back tenfold in pain. 38-year-old Brooke Pede lost her mother, sister, and wife all to drug overdoses. After being introduced to xylazine a few years back, she now navigates the human-cluttered sidewalks of Philly in her wheelchair, a result of her right leg being amputated from a xylazine injection wound that infected her bone. Yet, rather than face a harrowing withdrawal, she keeps injecting into mangled arms, whose tendons are exposed under pus-oozing flesh. How did it get to this? A situation seemingly a million times worse than in 1971, when President Richard Nixon said drugs were the U.S.'s new public enemy number one. By the end of the 1970s, there were about 3,000 drug overdoses a year in the U.S., compared to well over 100,000 a year in the 2020s. Well, newer and more powerful drugs are on the streets, and certainly one of the factors for the massive increase in overdose deaths. Over 2/3 of recent fatal American overdoses have involved synthetic drugs like fentanyl and xylazine. Xylazine has existed since the 1960s, but trials in humans were stopped because of the danger it posed. It caused serious respiratory depression and low blood pressure, so the FDA put up the red light. Humans just didn't think to use it to get high. It wasn't until 2018 that it started to become a mainstay in Kensington and some other areas around the US where drug dealers were selling it at $5 a shot, rather than the $10 for a shot of straight heroin. During the pandemic, usage soared as traffickers diverted more and more stocks of xylazine meant for beasts and pets to walking, talking Homo sapiens. But something far more worrying had to happen to create the dystopian present day where thousands of xylazine deaths now happen each year, about 3/4 of them men. Traffickers started making xylazine themselves, rather than merely diverting veterinary supplies. This was when xylazine hotspots started to pop up in the 2020s, which according to the CDC were Delaware, the District of Columbia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and West Virginia, followed by regions along the East Coast such as those bruised and battered streets of Philadelphia. The latest data tells us that xylazine was found in drugs in 48 of 50 US states. It keeps spreading and it doesn't look like it's going to go away anytime soon. In the UK, there were 11 xylazine deaths from 2022 to 2023. It wasn't just found in heroin samples, but in synthetic marijuana vapes and the fake codeine and Valium pills that pervade the poorer areas of many British towns and cities. Synthetics are the new normal, and there is no end in sight. They're cheap to make, hard to detect, and incredibly potent in minute quantities. According to the DEA, the precursor chemicals for xylazine have been coming from Chinese gangs, who've been selling it to Mexican drug cartels. The cartels then export it to gangs inside the US. At just $6 to $20 per kilogram, it's an affordable way to fatten a batch of heroin, fentanyl, or fake pills. The solution is made in makeshift labs on the other side of the US border. The labs keep expanding. The Breaking Bad-style chemists keep learning, and the American dream becomes a zombie-filled nightmare. The DEA recently called xylazine the deadliest drug threat our country has ever faced. And now cartels are mixing something even more potent than xylazine into their opioids. In 2024, there were reports in the US media about a stronger veterinary sedative that was being found in the blood of people who had overdosed. This drug, medetomidine, another animal tranquilizer, was said to be behind mass overdose outbreaks in Chicago. Like xylazine, it doesn't respond to Narcan. There have been cases in the ER when overdose victims had opiates, xylazine, and medetomidine in their blood, which is about as dangerous as playing Russian roulette 5 times in a row without reloading the bullet. With over 80% of the world's opioid users, the US is the main market for these creative criminal gangs. Gone are the days when they put all their effort into harvesting the pulp from opium poppies or farming marijuana, drugs that were safer than the killer concoctions on the streets in 2024. These synthetics are here to stay, finding a home where words like cheap and strong will always outweigh safety concerns. Now you need to watch what happens to your body if you do meth, or have a look at what happens to your body when you do cocaine.